look up to the mountains. Does my strength come from the mountains? No. My strength comes from God, who made heaven and earth and the mountains.
Good morning. Good Sunday morning. It's good to be back with you again, and this is sort of a special Sunday morning for me because I don't have to preach at Augusta Community Church or the Dearborn. Ryan McCoy from Montana Wilderness School of Bible is speaking for me. I was going to take this Sunday off, but I will be at the morning service because of a good friend of ours, Shane Bowman, will be there, and we want to spend some time with him. So I'm just doing an online sermon, and really it's not much of a sermon, it's more of a little talk, and I just want to share some things with you from this last week. I've got my Bible here, I've got my cup of coffee, and looking forward to just sharing some things with you. And it's just sort of a special time that I had this last week, because this last week myself and a good friend of mine went on a backpack trip. One of the joys of living in Augusta is that we live so close to the Scapegoat, Bob Marshall, Great Bear Wilderness area, which is all connected to Glacier Park, which is connected to Waterton Park up in Alberta, and there's just a few minutes away, and there's all kinds of places to go and see around here in God's creation. So this last week, Dan Tracy and I, he's a history teacher at our high school here in town, we ended up going on a backpack trip. There were several other guys that were going to go with us, but various reasons they bailed out, and so the two of us just said, well, we're going anyway. And in 2.5 days we traveled 30 miles, and remarkably in those 30 miles we didn't see one other person. I bet you would like to know where we went, wouldn't you? But when you think of our usually crowded lifestyles, that's pretty impressive to go that far in this day and age and not see anybody else. Where we journeyed to is a place that I would argue is as impressive as anything you will encounter in Glacier Park. God's creation, even in a fallen world, never ceases to impress me and leaves me without words to describe what his perfect creation must have been like and will be again as he restores his world in the coming future. But this place we arrived at is not an easy journey. Perhaps if you have a horse, it would be a lot easier, but we are of those who put packs on our back and walk. At about a 3-mile-per-hour pace, we covered some ground and still enjoyed the ever-changing scenery as we climbed up and up. To be honest, hiking can be hard work, and if you only see it that way, it will not be pleasant. But when you factor in the knowledge that there is a great destination awaiting you, and you take the time and effort to admire the beauty along the way, hiking brings great satisfaction in completing a journey that you could not have done any way else. I believe many of you know exactly what I mean, and if not, you know what? There's no time like the present. One great joy in hiking is arriving at certain destinations and finding clear, cold streams to jump into, and at first having your breath taken away, and then getting used to it, just sitting in the water and letting the heat of the hike wash away. And that's something we experienced a couple times. Life is like that, a long haul, up and up. Questions, will I arrive? Will I find all that I want, all that I'm searching for, all that will bring real lasting joy and beauty? I'd like to share a story with you this morning out of a book that was given to me at my high school graduation in 1974. I'm telling you my age here. It was given to me by my uncle and aunt Roy and Thelma Erickson, and just shortly after my graduation they left to go back to Cameroon, Africa, where they were missionaries, had been for years and years, and continued on even after that. The book is called Wild Rivers and Mountain Trails. It's written by a man named Don Ian Smith. I believe Don has passed away some years ago. And during my years after high school, working, and then going to different colleges in Minnesota and California, I carried that book around with me for years without reading it, but never thinking much about throwing it away because it came as a gift from an uncle and aunt that were very special to me. Then in the late 1990s, I was searching for something to share with my rancher and outfitter friends here in Augusta at our men's Bible study. And I picked up this book, And little did I know how the Lord was saving this book for this group of men then and now, present and into the future. There's one story, it's a series of short stories, and one story the author tells has always impacted us men. And I think most of them have heard it more than once. They've wanted me to go back over it. Because we all live in an area close to wilderness adventures, while at the same time we are living with faith in Christ and seeking to serve Him on each of our life's journeys. So if you will indulge me this morning, I would like you to let me read this short story to you. The title of this particular one is called Switchbacks on the Trail. And it just takes a few minutes to read, and then I'll just finish after that. This past summer, a friend and I made a trip into a scenic wonderland. On maps and in land use, this wonderland is known as the Salmon River Breaks Primitive Area. It lies on the north side of the Salmon River in central Idaho, well downstream from the end of a Forest Service motor road. It is in that part of the river canyon that is not reached by roads of any kind, only trails. One can get into the area by floating down the river in a boat and then hiking up one of the trails. Or he can take the main trail that follows the river down to the point where he wishes to climb up into the breaks of the canyon from which the area gets its name. Since Gene and I were traveling by horse, we took the river trail, leaving our horse trailers at the Corn Creek campground at the end of the road. We traveled down the river for about 6 miles to the mouth of Horse Creek and turned up Horse Creek for a mile or so. Then we climbed out of the canyon on the Pinto Creek Trail up to the West Horse Ridge, which is the designated east boundary of the Salmon River Breaks. We made the trip on the excuse that we were looking for a good place to make a fall elk hunt. But we really didn't need any excuse, and we knew it. It is reason enough just to go into such spectacular country. After leaving the river trail, we saw no other people until we returned to the river 3 days later. We could relax, listen to the horse bells as our hobbled horses grazed on a mountain meadow in the evening, and imagine ourselves back with the mountain men who used these same trails, with the same basic means of transportation a century earlier. At that time, the present wilderness was one of the busiest parts of Idaho, as gold seekers, native Indians, pioneer merchants, and adventurers traveled the area with their strings of horses and mules. They were not restricted as we are today to areas with roads. In many ways, the most interesting part of our trip was the climb up out of the canyon from the level of the river, which is at an elevation of about 3,000 feet at the mouth of Horse Creek, to the site of the Old West Horse Forest Lookout at an elevation of 7,400 feet. The site of the old lookout is actually on the rim of the canyon. After leaving the river, we climbed steadily for several hours, covering 7 or 8 miles of trail. In doing this, we gained 5,000 feet in elevation, but not more than 2.5 miles laterally away from the river. Looking back toward the river, one gets the feeling that a good ball player could throw a rock from the rim of the canyon back down to the river, a route over which we had spent many hours of hard climbing. On one section of the trail, there is a great open face where the trail makes 16 long switchbacks. This face is so steep that at any point, if a horse were to step off the trail and lose his balance, he could very well roll all the way to the creek bottom where the switchbacks begin. Riding such a trail, it is well to keep in mind the fact that a good horse knows this, has the situation under control, and is safer than a car on a freeway where the other driver is not always as dependable as a good mountain horse. Riding my horse up the Pinto Creek Trail gave me a good deal of time to think. After getting home, I looked up Webster's definition of switchback. He aptly calls it a zigzag road in a mountainous region. This almost vertical slope could not be easily climbed without the switchback trail, which was well engineered a number of years ago by the Forest Service. Earlier travels would have followed a dangerous trail using the natural switchbacks of trails made by wild animals. The long switchbacks on the improved trail keep a good even grade. A horse can keep an even pace as you climb the canyon wall. They certainly zigzag, and if one did not understand the reason for them, the long switchbacks could be most frustrating. I wanted to get to the top of the canyon rim, but after some hard riding, I would find myself looking down at a place just a few feet below my stirrups where I had been many minutes before. One could get to wondering whether or not he was getting nearer his destination. Maybe the trail had a way of going in some sort of weird circle. One would get an urge to try to go straight up the mountain. He could be thankful that his sensible horse did not share the urge. Riding along on that fine summer day, listening to the steady rhythm of the hoofbeats of my saddle horse and pack horse, feeling the horse's heavy breathing under the saddle, watching Gene and his horses ahead of me on the trail, I thought how much life is like a steep climb up a mountain that can be conquered only by a series of long switchbacks. We set goals that we hope to reach: a good home, a good living, a little money in the bank, better family relationships, a better personality, better education, more self-control. But we don't go right to them. The way is too steep. There are always barriers, and we find ourselves going the long way around. Like a plane circling to gain altitude or a sailing ship tacking against the wind, we find our goals in life are reached by a series of long and sometimes very difficult switchbacks. Sometimes we think of them as setbacks. Sometimes we resent them. We want to turn straight up the mountain or sail right into the wind. And when frustrations get too deep and it seems we're really going nowhere at all, it is important to remember that switchbacks have been put on the trail for a purpose. They may seem to delay us, but they are not on the trail to slow us down. They are there to make it possible to climb an otherwise insurmountable hill. They may seem to hold us back, but without them, we could not climb the mountain at all. Climbing the Pinto Creek Trail, I thought of some of the switchbacks I've had in my own life: time out for education, financial reverses that taught me some things I needed to know, sickness that has taught me patience, just to mention a few major ones. And the Pinto Creek Trail taught me some things about switchbacks that I hope I will always remember. First of all, when you are on a switchback that seems to take forever, remember you really are climbing a little. From time to time, we would stop to rest our horses and let them catch their breath. I could toss a rock into the trail below me where we had been a few minutes earlier. We had not come a long way from that spot and had not come up much higher, but we had come up a little bit. We were higher on the mountain than we had been. Not much, but some. In life, this happens. I take a year to complete what I wanted to do in a week, but it is done. I have gained something. I am not actually going in circles. I will not meet myself coming back. When I feel despair over a 25-year mortgage and it seems I will never be out of debt, it is important to see what has been paid, to look at my equity and not just the balance due. I need to look down at the switchbacks that are already below me rather than looking up all the time at the numbers still to be climbed. I remember a point on the trail when I looked down and saw that we had climbed 10 of the 16 switchbacks. There was a real sense of satisfaction. And in life, we need to pause from time to time and be thankful for the gains we have made. Unless one gets some satisfaction from what he has already done on the upward climb, he might lose his mind just thinking about all that he still has to do in the world and in his own life. And the second thing I learned on that trail was to enjoy the view as I went along. I didn't have to wait till we reached the rim to have a fantastic view of the canyon. Each switchback had its own viewpoint and put the whole canyon in a little different perspective than the view from any other switchback. There were wonderful sights I would never have seen if I had gone straight to the top. Points of view and aspects of the canyon that one cannot see from the top. The exciting views that one gets from the slow progress up the trail reminded me that too often in life we are so eager to get where we're going that we forget to enjoy the trip. And the journey can often be more interesting than the destination. And he ends with this: I remember a boy whose ambition was to be a retired rancher. Ranching can be a tough life, but the retired rancher who is well fixed knows that his greatest satisfaction comes not from his financial security, but from remembering the view, the companionship, the struggles, the pain, the long hours in the saddle on the steep trail that he rode to get to the place where he is. Switchbacks can be discouraging, but without them we cannot climb the mountain at all. You know, this morning I just want to leave you with that even us who are followers of Jesus Christ can get tired, we can get disappointed and frustrated on our journey of life. Often we find ourselves listening to the differing and the conflicting voices of this world, and all we see, if we look at them too much, is more disappointment, more frustration ahead of us. So as the author, Don Ian Smith, says, it is good for us to look back and see how far the Lord has brought us along. We met Jesus through his word, and we came to believe in him, finding forgiveness of our sins and the joy and freedom that that brings. We have prayed for his guidance, and we've received it. We have prayed for his help in times of need, and I'm sure all of us has found times when he's delivered. We have looked back over our lives and are able to see how he's been with us. We have read his words in his Bible and have learned that he knows the future and he will always be with us there also. Let me remind you, just as we've been going through Hebrews, next week I want to talk more about these last 5 verses in chapter 4. And there's this: for the word of God is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword, and piercing as far as the division of soul and spirit, of both joints and marrow, and able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And there is no creature hidden from his sight, but all things are open and laid bare to the eyes of him to whom we have to do. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin. Therefore, let us draw near with confidence to the throne of grace, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. You know, no matter the times and circumstances you and I live in, the things that we walk in, we, as true followers of Jesus Christ, are not alone. Have confidence in him. Look closely and see his presence with you, finding great joy in that. Oh, where did my friend and I hike to? Well, we went to a beautiful high valley called